Well, Zimbabwe is getting ready for general elections on the 30th of July. The date was announced earlier today. It will be the first time since the ousting of former President Robert Mugabe. To discuss this further, we are joined by Africa Analyst Gideon Chitanga. Gideon, thank you so much for coming through. So the date has been announced by President Emmerson Mnangagwa. Watching from where you sit, are you optimistic that what will prove to be a major test for the president, that he will actually pass that test and deliver free and fair and credible elections?
The test for free and fair and credible election is a very high standard. But from what we are seeing, there is some modicum of freedom in Zimbabwe for people to express themselves. If the situation stays like this, I think it's one of those elections which is going to be fairly free of violence. The problem with respect to violence is that there's been a lot of intimidation, and the level of violence previously might be a carryover into the current situation, particularly in the rural areas. But by and large, it looks to be a non-violent election, and interestingly, the government and President Mnangagwa have invited international monitors and observers to come to Zimbabwe to witness what is happening. So that is interesting. For the opposition and civil society, the challenge is to make sure that they provide the critical oversight to monitor malpractices, electoral malpractices. That is very important. The second thing is to, within the context of the improved conditions that is happening, there's need to raise issues and prove that they are credible. So we need that shift from mere allegations that are associated with the suspicious environment which previously existed before this current regime, so that where there are cases of malpractices, then there is proper evidence and those issues can be properly dealt with.
So the first step towards those elections has been this process of voter registration, which had started already even under the former President Robert Mugabe and was reopened to allow more people. It's based on a biometric system, and that brings in issues of technology. And you and I remember that the 2013 election, there was a lot of debate about the role of technology in deciding the outcome. Talk to me about the processes and the logistics of staging this election. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission plus the infrastructure that they use, can they be trusted?
Yes, so suspicion is based on a long period of disputed electoral processes and events. You go back to 2000 and that suspicion will not go in a single day. But surely I think political players must always, and the institutions that are involved in running elections must have in mind that it is important to run a credible process. It is also important to deal with the notion of suspicion, because it is part of the baggage that hangs around the political process in Zimbabwe. The biometric process in itself, we saw that there were complaints around it. There are suspicions because ZEC has not been quite transparent in terms of explaining what it is to the public and to the concerned political players who are affected by it, in the sense that it compiles data that is used in political competition. So the opposition has complained about the whole issue of the software, where the technology is sourced, how it is going to be kept, who will look after it. In a normal democracy, it is the role of government to look after these things. But in a very suspicious environment where you have a government which is not quite necessarily legitimate, that is problematic. So ZEC should have gone, in fact, the government should have been transparent with that part of explaining to the public the whole process, what it means, what it entails, and how the infrastructure is looked after, including the data.
In fact, as you talk about a government and you say that's not necessarily legitimate, you bring up the specter of the army, the Zimbabwe National Defense Forces. They've long had a history in terms of how they wade into the political climate in Zimbabwe, especially ahead of elections. We've heard one or two voices being raised, including a voice from a minister who said that the army did not move Zimbabwe from a Mugabe era to easily give it away. Should we be worried about the role that the army may play in these elections?
Yes, it is a major worry. You look back in the history of Zimbabwe, the military have been a key part of the ZANU-PF machinery. After independence, ZANU-PF did not necessarily democratize that idea of separating the whole military and security institution from civilian politics. There's always been a kind of an overlap. But as you get to 2000, the 2000 referendum to be precise, I think at that stage, President Mugabe lost control, and the control of the state drifted to the security and the military institutions. So going forward from 2000, you find that the military service chiefs become a power anchor of ZANU-PF. Military elements are deployed into civilian institutions of government, including the institutions which are assigned to run electoral process, which should be doing this process in a very independent and autonomous way. And this, what is more problematic about it is the partisanization of the security and military institutions. So when Minister Mugabe raises this issue, he is actually raising a very sensitive issue in a country that is really bothered by the role of a military which does not respect civil liberties and human dignity and violates institutional and constitutional rule.
Well, July the 30th, we will see. Thank you so much for coming through. Gideon Chitanga is Africa Analyst, talking to us about those upcoming elections in Zimbabwe. And